Welcome back to Smarter Markets. We're at IETA's North America Climate Summit 2025 in New York City, and we're joined by Mandy Rambharos, CEO of Verra. Thanks for joining us, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Dave, for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Well, it's great to have you here. I was really hoping. It's always terrific to gather for New York Climate Week, get together with IETA and everyone who comes to the conference. It's a great chance to catch up. And I wanted to ask you, what have you been working on at Verra this year? What's on your agenda?
Well, we only have 10 minutes, right?
Sure.
So, because I could talk about that for hours, there's quite a lot of good things that are going on that we're working on. I spoke a lot last New York Climate Week, about some of the changes we've made internally to our review process. So we've launched the risk-based approach, which is really looking at how do we approach the review of projects from a more risk perspective, so that we make sure that we're being very sensible about project reviews, and that has led to us speeding up some of our review times. So that's being implemented now, and we're seeing the results, which is a good thing. So what is the next step? So a big thing for us right now is our digitalization strategy, which we've started working on now for quite a while. And it really is, I always say that when you get your delivery of your pizza, what you want to see is where the pizza is. Even if it's 5 minutes late, you can see where the guy is. And I think that was the problem we had with projects, where you weren't able to see where it was in that project pipeline. So now with our digital submission tool, you can submit your project digitally. But we also have Project Hub and Project Tracker, which are part of this digitalization journey that helps you reduce that uncertainty of where your project is along the pipeline. And then also digitalizing methodologies themselves. So that's a really important part of the project submission process, to take away some of the uncertainty, to take away some of the frustration. And then on the other side of that is digital monitoring, reporting, and verification. So what we're hearing from buyers is we want to see data integrity, we want to see data traceability, transparency, and being able to do that digitally is going to be extremely important. So we're running a couple of pilots with DMRV providers in order to do that. So that's big for us. It's a big chunk of what we're currently doing.
And when you think about digitizing the methodology, could you go into that a little bit deeper for us? What specifically are you doing there?
So what we're doing is we had a look at which of the methodologies are the most popular, so which are most used. And we started from there in terms of digitalizing the most popular ones first. So we've done about 20 methodologies now. So what it means is, previously as a project developer, you download our massive methodology document, you submit your project design document based on that. But now with methodologies being digitalized, if you can imagine, you sort of fill in the forms electronically. So all the data is already on digitally recorded. It's searchable. You're able to go back and look at the information and update or change information. Also, if we make an update or a change to a methodology in coming years or months, then it's easier to change. So if you think about filling in an electronic form for the IRS or whatever it might be, it's a similar sort of thing.
And how important do you think this could be when it's fully implemented? Because it sounds like you have a digital strategy from kind of project inception to, through measuring, through credit retirement. How much do you think that could, speed up or ease or de-risk the project?
That's the main goal here, right? Is to speed it up, reduce the risk, have this traceability and transparency that buyers and investors are looking for, and project developers need as well. But I must hasten to add that we cannot digitalize 100% of the process. You still need a human intervention. You still need to be able to do those sanity checks. So it won't be 100% digitalized, but what we're looking at is how do we make the process more efficient, speed it up, reduce risk, so you can see the data. Anybody can go into Project Hub, see the data, and trace where the development of the credits all the way to issuance, what it looks like. So I think that's going to increase a lot of integrity in the market and give a lot of certainty to buyers and investors.
And how have buyers, investors, and project developers been reacting to the digitization strategy?
So we've heard a lot of positives from the buyers and investors, from traders who are saying this is exactly what we need, exactly the right direction to go in, and from project developers. There's, when you have something new, there's always a little bit of reticence on, should we try this? You try it first, or you're the guy that tries AI first before me. It's a similar sort of thing. So we have some project developers that are leading in that respect and running pilots and running checking on what that digitalized methodology means for them. But we do need more project developers to have a better uptake, because these things are being used for the first time, right? So we need to debug it, and in order to do that, we need more project developers on board to use it.
And I'm curious, outside of the digitalization strategy, which is so important, what are some of the other topics that either you're hearing discussed here at the conference or other areas of focus that you would like kind of the broader carbon community to be focused on right now?
So we've just released the update to our VCS program, so the version 5, and we've made some innovative changes, I think, might be biased to the program or to the standard, to meet what we're hearing from the market. And the one change that we're hearing a lot around is around the permanence and the insurance tool. So there's a lot of discussion now in the market on what sort of insurance tools can you use in a carbon market. And you hear from traditional insurers saying, well, if you insure your home, you have to renew it every year and we have to check all of this stuff. And you're asking us to insure projects of trees standing for 40 years. So unprecedented.
When you put it like that.
Yes, unprecedented. So I think that's a very important discussion. I think whoever is in this market needs to weigh in on that. There are some of the new insurers coming out that are coming up with some innovative ideas and interesting ideas around that. I do think we all need to weigh in on that and say, we think this can work. This is our risk appetite. In this market, I think sometimes this is zero risk appetite. We need to look at what is our risk appetite around that and what instruments will make sense in the carbon market.
And one thing we've seen this year is there's been this strong growth in compliance markets around the world. So you've got Article 6, Corsia, and an openness among some compliance markets to accept credits from outside their own system. And I was curious, how do you see Verra's role in a world, and how do you see it kind of integrating, if at all, with what's happening on the regulatory and compliance side?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite topics, is let's drop the V in the VCM, because it's about bringing together the compliance markets and the voluntary markets into a carbon market. So just going off on a tangent, a slight variation here is we want to see growth in the market. We want to see growth in demand, because carbon financing is actually making a difference to communities. It's actually making a difference to decarbonization. So when we talk about how to scale the market, one of the things you have to reduce is fragmentation in the market. And so when we have compliance versus voluntary, we're introducing more fragmentation. So one of the things we've been doing is we've been working with a number of governments, signing memorandum of understanding on how to integrate a standard, independent crediting standard program like Verra into government regulation. So there's a couple of governments, Singapore, Colombia, South Africa, Peru, who in their climate regulations in their country have said that you can use the independent crediting program, credits generated through a Verra standard, to meet your compliance target, whether it's a carbon tax or whatever it might be, in your country. So quite a few governments have done that. We're working with more governments to do that. I do think, though, there's a lot of room for bringing the voluntary and the compliance markets together, using the same methodologies and making sure we reduce some of the fragmentation, because it also confuses the buyers, right, when we have all of this separation. COSIA is important, and I think a lot of people are looking for COSIA to drive demand in the market as well. So working more closely with COSIA, making sure that they also approving methodologies that are ICVCM approved, having some standardization around that is also important.
And you may have already answered it, but I wanted to ask you, what are you following as what you think is like the most important development in the carbon markets today?
It's quite a number of things. So it's the digitalization, clearly, is one big area that we're following, and making sure that we are keeping up with the trends, making sure that Verra is relevant, remains relevant. But also, I think the other thing is looking back over years, and I had the dubious privilege of being involved in carbon market negotiations for 1,000 years in my previous life. And some of those rules we set then had a reason for being. And as what we did was, when we started the voluntary carbon market, a lot of that was copy and paste. And I really think we need to go back and look at, should we still be following these same rules? How do we adjust those rules with regards to what the market now requires, what it is that we need to do to grow demand? I'm also very keen to make sure that everybody understands the business case for investing in the carbon market. So if I was approaching a CFO or a board, how do I sell carbon markets to them so their eyes don't glaze over and they fall off their chairs? What is that messaging that we need to get through to CFOs?
And maybe that's a good place. The last question I wanted to ask you was, you know, when you think about it, what's the most important thing that we collectively could accomplish over the next year to really make progress on the climate and advancing the carbon markets and making them more effective?
So we in the space, it's a small world in the carbon market. We need to stop fighting with each other. And we need to stop having this or market and move towards an and market. So it's not removals or reductions, it's removals and reductions. It's not nature or tech, it's nature and tech. So I really think we need to have these open, frank conversations with each other as practitioners in the market to say, can we actually look at the fact that the climate is changing? We need all the tools in our toolbox, and it sounds very cliched, but we do need all the solutions. And we're really just doing the work of the anti-carbon markets guys when we have infighting, right? So it's just look at how we turn this from an or market into an and market is something I think if we agree, will really progress in the next year.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with us. Appreciate you taking the time, Mandy.
Thank you. Really appreciate the work you guys do.